Welcome to the Project Censored Show on Pacifica Radio. I'm your host, Mickey Huff. This is our annual Banned Books Week program. Banned Books Week this year is the first week of October. Banned Books Week goes all the way back to 1982. It is a concerted national coalition and effort to call attention not only to the right to read, let freedom read is this year's theme. It also calls attention to the challenges and the many guises censorship takes around the country when it comes to books and reading. It's a very, very significant week. I think every week should be Banned Books Week as far as calling attention and raising awareness around the challenges we have with censorship and free expression in the alleged land of the free. And we really couldn't have a better guest to kick off today's program. We are delighted to welcome back to the show Betsy Gomez, the Assistant Director of Communications and Outreach for the American Library Association's Office for Intellectual Freedom, and the coordinator for Unite Against Book Bans and the Banned Books Week Coalition. Disclaimer, of course, Project Censored has been a member of the Banned Books Week Coalition for a decade or more. Betsy is the former coalition and editorial director for Comic Book Legal Defense Fund, an advocacy organization dedicated to First Amendment rights of the comics community. Certainly, again, CBLDF, our audience is no stranger to the important work that organization has done over the years. Also, with more than a decade of professional experience defending intellectual freedom, Gomez also has an extensive background in educational publishing as a content developer and editor. So basically, all the things we can put together in one person creates the very ideal Betsy Gomez, who's joining us today as the head of the Banned Books Week Coalition. Betsy, welcome back to the program.
Oh, well, thanks for having me again, Mickey. I'm happy to be here.
Yet I'm so sorry that you've been so busy the last year or two, because there has been an extraordinary uptick in book challenges, book bans, censorships, attempts to cancel people, outlandish claims of grooming, and so on. It's really kind of descended into a strange environment. We have over half the states in the union trying to pass laws or passing laws that try to curate what teachers teach in the classroom, what students can read. Suddenly, librarians went from being overlooked and ignored to somehow being public enemy number one. I mean, just extraordinary things happening. And Betsy Gomez, can you bring us up to speed? What's happening? What's the main crux for Banned Books Week here this year?
Well, now that you kind of set us up for some sort of Mad Max scenario with censorship, it is pretty terrifying in terms of numbers. I've been doing this work for in some capacity for almost 20 years, and I've never seen it like this. And ALA has been tracking it even longer. And we just last week released some new numbers on censorship for the first part of this year, so January 1 through the end of August. And we're on track to probably exceed what we did last year. And last year was the highest ever number of censorship attempts that we'd ever tracked in almost three decades of work. So just this year, we've seen 695 attempts to restrict materials in libraries. And this isn't just books, it's also programs and other offerings in the library ecosystem. We've seen 1,915 unique titles targeted for censorship. We're on track to exceed the number that we had last year, which was just shy of 2,500. In total, if you count duplicate challenges to titles, because titles are often challenged multiple times in multiple locations, it's just shy of 4,000 books impacted. In 92% of the challenge cases so far tracked in 2023, it impacts more than one book. It used to be that when you got a challenge, it was one person, a parent, usually, who was concerned about a book their kid was reading in class or had gotten from the library. So it was one person, one book. Now what we're seeing is people challenging entire huge lists of books. In fact, there were 11 states where we had censorship attempts targeting 100 or more titles. And that's up from the previous year where we had, I believe, 9. So, it's an organized campaign in a lot of places.
It certainly is an organized campaign. And again, I think you said something, well, you said lots of important things, but one thing that you said contextually is that historically it was the case that a parent would bring a title of concern. It was more of an individualized thing. And sometimes parents then can work things out with teachers or librarians and get alternative assignments, but the book doesn't get taken away or off the shelves. But what we've been seeing in the last couple of years is very different than that. And we now see mass movements. I don't want to necessarily say AstroTurf, but these movements like Moms for Liberty or what have you, or these parental rights groups. And I'm not suggesting that parents shouldn't have rights. So I just want to get that out of the way. But there's movements where big money is flowing into certain areas of the country from other parts of the country to try to stack school boards, like other kinds of local political arenas to sort of shift the debate here. I mean, it happened even here in Northern California. In allegedly sort of liberal strongholds of the East Bay or Walnut Creek, the suburbs where they tried to stack the school board. They weren't successful there, but they've been remarkably successful other places up in Northern California and other places or the Valley. Folks don't expect to see these kind of things, but this, again, it's calling attention to the fact that this is, I wouldn't say nearing ubiquitous, but this kind of stuff is happening all over the place, and it's happening under these monikers of things like parental rights and so on. Betsy Gomez, could you talk a little bit about that shift and the challenges that it's creating?
Yeah, it's very essential to like reiterate that no area has been spared from this, even liberal strongholds like California. There's no space that's been spared from this, and it's happening for the most part at a hyper local level, but it is based on materials that are being distributed on a national level. The organizations you're talking about have entire playbooks that they send out and share with their constituencies. I've seen at least one of them where they excerpt books and that, sections of the books that they find offensive, and encourage people to take those allegedly offensive materials to school board meetings and library board meetings and read them out loud to generate outrage about this allegedly pornographic and obscene material that's in the library. And to make it clear, no library is shelving obscene or pornographic material, especially in their kids section. They just don't do that. Librarians do not operate that way. They serve an entire community, and if a book is there, it's because somebody in the community wants to read it. And a parent has a right to guide their own child's reading, but they don't have a right to make decisions for other children in the community. And this parents' rights argument that they often use is disingenuous. Their rights aren't being violated. They do have a right to make a decision for their own child, but when they demand the removal of a book, they're taking the rights of other parents away. And they're doing a lot of children a disservice by limiting access to information.
Well, Betsy Gomez, let's get into that, because the kinds of books that are being challenged, like there's a pattern. The kinds of people that are being canceled, or the narratives that are being suppressed, or the things that certain small groups don't think other groups should read. There's a history here of, it seems like, of a vast majority of authors that are targeted for banning or challenged books, or the topics and subjects are about or regard some kind of marginalized communities or social justice concerns.
Yeah, the majority of the material that's being challenged is by or about the LGBTQ plus experience, or by Black, Indigenous, and people of color. And again, they're used in the guise of pornographic material or sexually explicit or age inappropriate to target this work, so that they can often disguise the fact that, the root cause is things like homophobia or discomfort with racism and anti-racism work. And so by far underrepresented voices are targeted more frequently in these cases. And they've, some of the more organized campaigns are savvy. They don't specifically say we're targeting LGBTQ content, but if you look at the books they're targeting, that is what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, and once you actually start, here's a trick. Once you actually go and read these, right, you can see what they're about. And it usually doesn't take long to figure out, like, well, I guess I could see why someone who is X would not approve of this or not like this. But isn't it also the part of our culture And again, I think that this is probably a lost part educationally, but isn't this how we learn and maybe become more comfortable or accepting of different ideas, is through literature, through arts, through this dissemination? Isn't this a way that we build bridges of understanding that really embellish our lives and make them so much richer and more vibrant and better, and not necessarily something to be fearful of?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's what they're afraid of. They're afraid that, if kids can read about people who aren't like them, they
Gasp.
might come to accept it.
Oh,
Also, I think there's also, and fear is a motivator. And I do like to think that most people have a genuine interest in making sure their kids are safe and protected. But in protecting them from this content, you're protecting them from the world, because books give us a window to the world. Speaking for myself personally, I grew up on a tiny farm in central Illinois, and that was entirely a white community, and I didn't see the world except through library books. And so that's what you're limiting that perspective on the world when you limit books. And it's essential that kids in particular have a chance to see themselves reflected in the work, have a chance to see their families reflected in the work, and have a chance to see their friends reflected in the work.
yeah. I mean, we really need to expand the Overton window here. I mean, we really need to have more ideas, more voices, more people. I mean, this is what librarians do. I mean, it's interesting that now many librarians are on the front line in their communities, and in ways that we just never seen before, for some small communities in particular, where librarians weren't even acknowledged, really. Some people just forget who they are and they're out of school. Certainly not us. We're huge fans of librarians and the ALA and all these things, and work with many people in that world. But I think people just fundamentally don't really understand the importance of libraries and what librarians actually do. Much like I think that folks don't understand the function of journalism. It turns into a really distorted version in the public mind, versus the way in which it's set up as a tenet of a free society, where we become more aware of each other and our issues, and we can become more meaningfully civically engaged and tolerant of one another.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people who are leading this campaign don't recognize that libraries are essential community centers.
Absolutely.
They're not just places where you get books. They're warming centers when the power goes out and it's freezing outside. They're cooling centers when it's hot outside. They're places where small businesses get started. They're places where people can meet and come together to talk about their interests. Most libraries offer meeting room space and resources beyond books. For a lot of communities with limited internet access, it's where you go to get online. And so in attacking libraries, it's not that they're attacking books, they're attacking a fundamental community institution that is at the heart and is the healthy beating heart of a lot of communities.
It really is. And I just want to give a quick shout out right now to one of my best friends I grew up with in Pennsylvania. He's a librarian. So Blake up in Olympia, just wanted to give a quick shout out and thank him for all that he does for the people in that community. And I'll tell you, Betsy, he tells me stories of so many things on a daily basis that he sees. It really starts to remind me. I know our mutual friend, Adam Bessie, that I teach with, wrote Going Remote about teaching. So many of the things that we're doing at the community college level or the public university or educational institution in the library, so much of it is like a triage and sort of caring for so many things going on in the community where people are in need. And libraries are a big part of that. And reading and books are a big part. Do you think that they're really a big part of sort of therapy even, or for people to have outlets and to understand each other? I mean, again, I'd like to talk a little bit more about that theme, because when we're talking about challenging books and banning books, we're really talking about just shutting off entire people from their own communities and their own experiences. It causes great harm. Betsy Gomez.
Yeah, I mean, again, just kind of calling on personal experience, a perfect example. Like, I grew up in a community that had 350 people in it. And if I hadn't had a school library and school librarians who got me the books that I asked for, they probably called my mom to make sure it was okay. But, I don't know that I would be doing this work today. And I don't know that a lot of my classmates would have been able to leave the community. Rural communities in particular, I think libraries are essential for those communities. They're essential for any community, but in a community where there's limited access to the rest of the world, it's key.
That's where I grew up in Western Pennsylvania. The library was a central part of our, of our experience growing up, and not just having access to books, but music. I mean, so many things that again, I'll show my age for sure. Nowadays, where people can just get things at fingertips. I mean, you actually had to like wait for something to come on the radio or record it or buy it. And kids didn't have a lot of money. So borrowing records and different things from the library, I mean, it's just a really crucial part. The library is so essential. And again, Banned Books Week is about calling attention, for me in a lot of ways, to the whole cultural role that library and information dissemination plays. And it should be something that should be revered. It shouldn't be something that's so wantonly sullied by political whim or favor or a trend of the day. So Betsy Gomez, maybe you can talk a little bit about that, because there are very specific things going on right now, very specific challenges. And I think it helps our listeners understand just what some of the specifics are. And because I think some folks just don't understand how egregious and absurd some of the challenges really are.
Yeah, well, there's an entire kind of, if you look at the trends, and if you look at kind of the way some of these challenges are being put, a lot of challenges are being brought by people who don't even read the books.
Right.
And they're using the materials that are being disseminated and just reproducing those on their challenge forums. And in fact, they seem to be kind of proud that they haven't read the books. Yeah. Which is really disappointing, because there's a lot of great stuff in the books they're challenging. There's a reason most of these books are award winners and adored and almost universally shelved in libraries. And so Banned Books Week, it started in 1982 because there was a rash of challenges in 1982. It seems like this whole, like, it's a little cyclical, this panic over what kids are reading and engaging with, and nothing like what we're seeing now. But it started as an informational campaign because a lot of people didn't know what was happening. And I find even today, a lot of people don't know the scale of what's happening. People are starting to figure out, people are starting to take action. And so Banned Books Week always functioned to let people know about what was happening, what books were being targeted, why they're being targeted. And this year we're actually flipping the script a little bit to also tell people about what they can do to fight it, because so much of this activity is local. It's essential for us to take individual action to protect books in schools and libraries. And so on October 7th for Banned Books Week, we are having Let Freedom Read Day, a day of action. And so if you have 5 minutes, call a decision maker. If you've got more time, write a letter to the editor or write to your decision makers. Even more time, start organizing in your community to help support your libraries and school boards. And so we're asking everybody to do just one thing on October 7th to help defend books in libraries and schools.
And of course, listeners can go to bannedbooksweek.org. You have a promotional tools page. You've got a very detailed resource page, logo, poster, bookmarks, banners, ALA downloads. I mean, the whole shebang. Bannedbooksweek.org is the website that has all of this information. Of course, ALA.org, Office for Intellectual Freedom, they have new data and reports. And then, of course, so too does PEN America, right? Booklash, Literary Freedom Online, Outrage, and the Language of Harm from August. So you are a one-stop shop, really, for resources around Banned Books Week.
Can I add one more resource?
I was just going to say, Betsy Gomez, would you please add more resources and tell people where they can find you and where they can get involved? Because I really want to focus on this get involved and solutions component so people really can go and do something.
Yeah, so another place that people can get involved, like bannedbooksweek.org, definitely visit there. And we've got a tab for Let Freedom Read Day with some ideas for what you can do on that day. But I'd also encourage people to visit uniteagainstbookbans.org. That's unite, no D, againstbookbans.org. It is a public-facing initiative that ALA launched last year to encourage direct action. It's got an amazing toolkit with talking points. I've been doing a lot of work with them to help community organizers in various communities around the country with advice and guidance on how to do the work. And we also send targeted messaging when there's a need for people to show up at a board meeting or to go to a rally. And Unite Against Book Bans has more than 200 national, state, and local partners that have signed up to join. And thousands of individuals have joined the campaign. And I encourage everybody who's listening to join as well, because it makes it easier for us to reach you when a community needs help.
Well, Betsy Gomez, we're going to be signing up here, and I'll be following up with you personally. We're going to be signing up here in Northern California, out of Sacramento. There are a couple of local areas out of Sacramento that have some pretty active book censoring folks on school boards up here. And since I'm now over this way, I'd like to do something about it. So, so I'll be following up.
Thank you.
And I think other people need to do the same things. I was taking the opportunity to say that I know I'm going to do something about it. That means everybody out there in the Project Censored audience, you can do something about it too, right? Unite Against Book Bans. Is it .org?
.org, yes.
Yeah, uniteagainstbookbans.org. We've been speaking with Betsy Gomez, Assistant Director of Communications and Outreach for the American Library Association's Office for Intellectual Freedom, Coordinator for Unite Against Book Bans, and the Banned Books Week Coalition, of which Project Censored is a proud member. Betsy Gomez, anything else you'd like to share with our audience today? Where to follow you, other information, anything?
Just definitely visit bannedbooksweek.org. And if you are free on October 5th, the evening of October 5th, join us on Instagram at @bannedbooksweek with underscores between each word. We are going to have LeVar Burton, who is the honorary chair of Banned Books Week, is going to be doing an Instagram live with us. Very excited to have LeVar on board. And we also have an amazing youth honorary chair, Datavian Daniels, who will be interviewing LeVar for that program.
Absolutely. And we're going to have Datavian on the program later today with Cameron Samuels and also Jonah Winter. So Betsy Gomez, thank you so much for all of the important work that you do around Banned Books Week and all related items for protecting freedom of expression, the right to read. Your work is so very important. bannedbooksweek.org. And thanks so much, Betsy. We wish you all the best.
Thank you, Mickey, for having me. And thanks to everyone for listening.